On January 6th, I will object to the Electoral College vote. That's right. Thank you. We're going to get this done. All right. Mr. President, when I arrived in Washington this morning, I fully intended to object to the certification of the electoral votes. However, the events that have transpired today have forced me to reconsider, and I cannot now in good conscience object to the certification of these electors. The violence, the lawlessness, and siege of the halls of Congress are abhorrent and stand as a direct attack on the very institution my objection was intended to protect, the sanctity of the American democratic process. And I thank law enforcement for keeping us safe.
There's going to be 12 hours of testimony in each house, House of Congress, the House and the Senate. Particularly Jim Jordan, the guys in the House, and Matt Gaetz. We'll get some polls later.
Brandon, by the way, you are right. You talk a lot, Steve, about how courage is contagious. Unfortunately, college, and I'm afraid it was yesterday in the United States Senate, but I think it's particularly egregious for Kelly Loeffler, and here's why. Because literally her promise to the people of Georgia, to the good citizens of the Peach State, her promise was literally just hours old. Her conviction, or her alleged principled stance, where she promised to be elected that she would object to the votes, and then changed later. And to Raheem Kassam's point, nothing changed regarding the vote. No events in Capitol Hill had any bearing upon the validity of the vote in Georgia, or I should say the invalidity, really, of the vote in Georgia. So she showed herself, unfortunately, to be a Benedict Arnold. She betrayed the citizens of her state and patriots all over the country. But here's the thing, Steve, and here's the bigger point. Rather than just complaining about Kelly Loeffler, what does this mean for us going forward? Because we have to live and learn. We have to learn the lessons and what they mean going forward for our movement. We can't say that we weren't warned, because we were warned about who Loeffler actually is. We were warned actually last spring when the news broke of her insider trading scandal, when she was very new to the United States Senate, appointed over the objections of President Trump, by the way, who wanted Doug Collins. And if Doug Collins had been appointed senator, I fully believe he would have been elected senator this week, and we would have a sitting Republican senator from Georgia, and a great one. Instead, unfortunately, Governor Kemp, who we now know who he is, Governor Kemp appointed Kelly Loeffler. When she was very new in the Senate on January 24th, just about a year ago, she got a briefing from Dr. Fauci and other top officials of the United States government, health authorities primarily, intelligence people also, about just how serious this coronavirus situation was in China. At that time, outside of the war room, outside Steve Bannon and his crew, very few Americans were aware of the risks that were attendant and the risks that were looming for the global economy. What did Loeffler do? She literally went and sold millions and millions of dollars of stock over the next several weeks. As a matter of fact, into mid-February, she and her husband made a total of 29 stock trades. 27 of them were sales, Steve. Only 2 were buys, and one of the buys, by the way, conveniently, was of a software firm that specializes in at-home working, in teleworking software. Now listen, even if this was somehow unintentional, which seems very doubtful, the optics are absolutely terrible on this. Now, and by the way, speaking of her husband and the enormous wealth that she and her husband hold, her husband is the chairman of the NYSE. Connecting this back again to China, the NYSE, along with a lot of its member firms on Wall Street, has been instrumental, unfortunately, in financing the Chinese Communist Party. So my point here, Steve, is that we knew that she was a very troubled candidate, to say the least. I started to say so back last spring. I had my hands slapped. A lot of people within the Trump world asked me to hold my fire, which I agreed to do. In retrospect, I wish I hadn't. But here's my point going forward, Steve. We need to recruit serious, committed, America First candidates. We cannot dance with the devil. We cannot try to prop up somebody like Kelly Loeffler, who as soon as things get difficult is going to betray us. If we are going to be this serious movement to transform America that we can be, and we're still in the early innings. I was very pleased that Donald Trump put that in his statement that he released overnight. These are early days of this American nationalist movement. We have to believe that. I know things are hard right now for all of us, but these are early days of this movement. But a crucial path forward for the movement is we need to recruit candidates who meet really serious criteria. And what I mean by that, what do I mean by the criteria? How are we going to evaluate candidates? They need to have, number one, courage, number two, intellect, and then number three, skills. And if we evaluate them on those three criteria, by the way, Kelly Loeffler would have failed to meet the mark on all three of those criteria. But if we look for people who have courage, who have intellect and have skills. And when I say skills, I primarily mean media skills, because I think that's what's most important in this digital age we live in. But if we recruit and finance and train those kinds of candidates for elections, and I mean starting right now, because we have to get ready today for 2022, then this Trump movement, this America First movement, is young and can still thrive and succeed into the future. But we cannot have any more situations where we have failed, corrupted, turncoat candidates like Kelly Loeffler.
Cortes, one last thing, and you got about a minute and a half. So many people that are watching this show, so many people overnight go, hey, I'm just through with voting. This is, there's no institutions that are faithful. We get backstabbed all the time. I'm just going to give up. What would you say to those people right now?
Right, and I'm hearing that a lot. First of all, I would say I understand your angst. I 100% do. So I get it. Okay, but that is not the answer. To quote Maximo Alvarez, he's that amazing Cuban immigrant who spoke at the Republican National Convention. I thought he was the best presentation of a string of wonderful presentations. He said, because he fled to this country, and he said, there's nowhere else to go. And it's exactly right. There is nowhere else to go. This is it. America is the last stop for freedom. So we have no choice but to work hard, to roll up our sleeves. Is it easy? Of course not. It's not easy. But what we are attempting is so great, is so transformational for this country that we have to continue. So what I say to those deplorables out there, I understand your frustration. I understand that you don't want to vote again. And by the way, look, I'm not being Pollyanna saying everything is fine. A big part of what we also need to do in 2021 and 22 is make sure that all of these states reform their voting systems so that we know voting is valid and real and the system's not going to be gamed. But we can do all of this.
Okay, Steve Cortes, real quickly, what's your social media? How do people follow you?
I'm at Cortes Steve on Twitter, Cortes with an S, over at Parler, Steve Cortes.
Okay, thank you very much, Steve Cortes.